Guten Chodesh and happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Every day I receive an email from Yeshiva Teres Shimon. That's Rabbi Groner's yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva there Rabbi Groner happens to be the nephew of our Rav here in White Lake, Rav Fishbein Shlita. And I want to preface this by saying there's a concept that's popular. I'm sure it's brought somewhere in the Sfarim, but it's a popular note in the Orthodox Jewish world that if you're studying several things that seem to not be related and they happen to coincide, that's a sign that you're learning Torah Lishma, that your learning is a pure type of learning for its own sake and not for any self-aggrandizement or any other ulterior motive. And so too, we could probably say any other type of coincidence between the learning that you learned that day and what would be called in Yonah Yoma. You know, if you happen to be learning through a certain chapter in the Talmud, and let's say Hanukkah comes, and it just happens, not that you planned it that way, that you're learning my Hanukkah in the second chapter of Shabbos. While you're learning Gemara, and it happens, something like that. It just happens that you learn Maseches Megillah just around Purim, something along those lines. Also, I guess would be a similar type of a thing. So I found it interesting. So I on my own, I tend to try to learn at least 3 chapters of Mishnah every day. So I finish Shas Mishnayos twice a year. But additionally, since I get these emails from Rabbi Groner, from the Yeshiva Teres Shimon, which do 3 just Mishnayos, not chapters, just Mishnayos, and they say if you do 3 Mishnayos a day, you finish Shas Mishnayos in 4 years. Also pretty good. So we're up to Tractate Menachos. So it's the last 2 Mishnayos in the 7th chapter, and the first one, the 8th chapter. And I found it interesting, today being the American Thanksgiving Day, that the last 2 Mishnayos from the 7th chapter of Menachos, just happened to be, they didn't plan it like this, for sure not. Read as follows: if someone makes a vow that he is accepting upon himself the obligation as a vow to bring a thanksgiving offering in the temple. So I think it's worthwhile. So it says, Yavi hivalach min achulin. You should bring both the animal that you're offering as a sacrifice and the bread that comes with it from the non-consecrated sources, both the animal and the bread. If he said that the bread he will take, that the animal he will take from the non-consecrated food, but the bread from the second tithe, which has to be eaten in Jerusalem anyway, Yavi hivalach min achulin, still he should not bring the bread from the second tithe, but rather he should bring both from the non-consecrated sources, because that is the proper way to bring this offering. the Thanksgiving offering. However, if he wants to bring the Thanksgiving offering, that animal, from the tithe, meaning that he buys it with money, because an animal cannot be Meiser Sheni itself, but if you redeem the money for Meiser Sheni for the second tithe, it has to be. Then you use that money to buy any type of food, so you could use it to buy an animal. As long as the bread is coming from the non-consecrated source, then you're allowed to bring that. And similarly, if he said that both the animal and the bread should come from second tithe, then he's allowed to do that. But he should not be bringing the offering from wheat that itself was Meiser Sheni, that was second tithe, but rather he should bring it from that he sold the food that was Meiser Sheni and therefore redeemed the holiness left that of Meiser Sheni, of second tithe, left the produce, and now the holiness was placed on the money, and with that money you have to buy food or other consumables, food, drink, or oil to anoint oneself with, and so therefore it's acceptable there like that. The main thing is that throughout all of these is that the actual wheat to make the bread should not itself be Meiser Sheni, but the money used to buy it could be money of Meiser Sheni. Again, this doesn't necessarily have to do with the American Thanksgiving holiday, but I think it's worthwhile for us to learn these Mishnayos because it's a mitzvah, and also I think it makes the whole Thanksgiving a little bit more lishma, which I think is sorely needed, meaning that it should be with pure intentions. It's sorely needed. It's not as needed, I think, in our community, although I think it's, from one of my teachers, strongly suggested that we should celebrate Thanksgiving. Rabbi Siegel teaches that. Almost all of my other teachers either are ambivalent or are against it. And I know Rabbi Victor Miller was a big opponent of Thanksgiving, which I think I think nonetheless he would say we should put a flag on Thanksgiving. Because on all national holidays, the etiquette of proper flag etiquette is to have the flag out on your house on Thanksgiving Day. I keep a small flag outside of my house all the time. So the question is, where do we derive it from, biblically speaking, that if someone makes a vow to offer a Thanksgiving offering, that it has to come from non-consecrated sources? It cannot come from the second tithe or other consecrated sources. Shne'emar, so it's from Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 2. V'zavachta Pesach l'Hashem Elokecha tzorno v'okar. And it says that you should offer a Passover offering to the Lord your God, either from the flocks, meaning sheep and goats are called flocks, or from the cattle, from the large domesticated animals. So that's a very difficult verse. Why? Lama Namar Tzayin Uvakar. Oh wait, Aloi, excuse me. The actual Paschal offering itself can only come from the flocks, from the sheep or goats. You could not offer a Paschal bull. So, im kein Lamanemot Tzarnavaka. So, someone who might be reading this superficially, excuse me, might think, oh, a heretic would say that shows there was a different author to Deuteronomy or some other nonsense like that. But we who look through the lens of the sages, who look through the lens of Moses, who has, from the other groups, they said that our sages sit in the seat of Moses. To that which God gave to Moses. We understand that it's not a contradiction, but that there's a lesson to be learned from this. So the Mishnah answers this question. So if the Paschal offering itself can only come from a sheep or a goat, from a lamb or a kid, and yet here this verse says, and you should offer on Passover, it doesn't say on Passover, it says offer Passover to the Lord your God from the flocks, the sheep or the goats, or from the cattle. So it says, so what is the meaning of this mention of cattle here? So it says, it teaches that there's a similarity between the Paschal offering and every offering that is made from, whether it comes from sheep or goats, or whether it comes from large cattle. So it says like this, there seems to be some accident here. Whoa, this thing flipped over here. It's like a big SUV that flipped over. That's kind of scary. I don't even know how that would happen. Unless it fell off the side of the thing, I don't know. So, that whatever comes from, even whether it comes from sheep or goats, or whether it comes even from cattle. Speaking of cattle, I'm almost to where I hit the cow last year. That there's a similarity there to the Paschal offering. That the Paschal offering itself, which is obligatory, it's probably one of the most obligatory sacrifices. I would say it is the most obligatory sacrifice. This is where we hit the cow. Um, right? Because it's the only sacrifice that one who is able to bring it and fails to do so has the punishment that his soul is cut off. And so that which it comes from, that it's obligatory, it only can come from non-consecrated source, meaning you cannot take an animal that was already consecrated for another sacrifice and also bring it as a Paschal lamb. It has to only be for that. I've called over Shubab So to anything that's obligatory can only come from a non-consecrated source. Lefichach. Therefore, if someone says that he is accepting upon himself that he has to bring either a thanksgiving offering or a peace offering, and I don't understand what it means here that it's and even though initially they were not obligatory, but they become obligatory due to his vow, and so he has created an obligation upon himself. So therefore they're coming as an obligation. You can only bring from a non-consecrated source. And libations, in any event, can only come from a non-consecrated source. You can't use this to quote unquote kill two birds with one stone of, well, I have to consume the second tithe in Jerusalem, therefore I'll bring it as a sacrifice and it'll be double holy. You can apparently do that with the money of the second tithe, but not with the actual produce. The produce has to be redeemed, and then the holiness leaves that produce and is placed on that money. And now the money can be used for this vow, but it cannot be used, though it would seem, although there's other discussions about this, let's say, could a Kohen, well, there's a turkey on Thanksgiving. Turkey just flew in front of me, wild turkey. Last year, or 2 years ago, I don't remember what it was, there were turkeys crossing the road. I took a video, and it got a lot of views. So, anyway, I don't necessarily have a Thanksgiving message that I can darshan out of this Mishnah. Maybe if I thought about it a little bit more, I'd bring something out of it. But nonetheless, I feel there's a strong message here of the fact that this Mishnah came up today, and that there are hundreds, maybe thousands of Jews around the world who receive these emails from Rabbi Groner, Shlita, and it happens to be about the Thanksgiving offering in the temple. Again, this is an argument that we've always had in the Orthodox world. How do we look at this Thanksgiving holiday? What do we do with it? What is it? Is it idolatrous and prohibited, or is it secular and somewhat permitted, if not viewed as in an obligatory fashion? Meaning, Is it maybe it's okay to eat turkey on Thanksgiving? You don't have to like not eat turkey to not be assimilated? Or is it, as was embraced by the early settlers in America and by Jews in America for decades, that this is a day that all Americans should, within the traditions of their own religion, dedicate to be like what we would call a Yom Iyun, a day to concentrate on the concept of gratitude and thanksgiving. And therefore, like when the Christian should have a special service in his church, and the Muslim should have a special service in his mosque, and the Jew should have a special service in his synagogue. I didn't go to synagogue today because in my synagogue, you see on the thing here, it's 7:24 in the morning. We pray at 8:30. So I did elect to go to work today in order to do what Washington on the first Thanksgiving dedicated some time to serve and minister to prisoners, and I work in the prison, so I think it's certainly in the spirit of Thanksgiving to be here at work. Maybe if I get there early enough, maybe I'll make it back to shul for Mincha Maariv tonight, but I'm not sure. Possibly just for Maariv. But nonetheless, it's a very special Thanksgiving because every year on Thanksgiving there's a Torah reading, because Thursday there's always a Torah reading. But this year we also have Hallel, and according to the Ashkenazic tradition, at least in a public setting, there's a bracha on this custom of saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. It's not really Ikar Adin, it's really not proper to say a bracha on Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, but we do it really nonetheless anyway, and we have reasons why we say that we should do so. But even with that, really it's only supposed to be, and this is just because it's Rosh Chodesh Day, it's the New Moon Festival. But that Thanksgiving coincides with the New Moon Festival, I think is also very auspicious. And there's nothing wrong to have a little bit more, if you don't have to go to work today or not going to work today, and your shul, they're davening later, they usually maybe daven 6:30 in the morning, because it's a state holiday, national holiday, they're going to pray at 8:30 or whatever it is. Different synagogues have different customs. A lot of synagogues, they have 8:30 every day. There's a Zoom minion that you can listen to from Kesser Torah in Queens, where they have an 8:30 minion every morning that you can listen to live on Zoom from Torah anytime. And I try to, as much as possible, to listen to that at work, so I can respond to Kedusha, the Baruch Hu, and Kaddish, and everything there, if I'm not busy at that time. Something else that would make it difficult for me to be there. In any event, my feeling is that it's not important to eat turkey on Thanksgiving, or mashed potatoes, or stuffing, or all that stuff, or even to watch a parade, or to watch a football game, or even to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is more important than the other two. Um, it's Turkey Day. All of that stuff is nonsense. But to wash and have a Sudas Haidor, to celebrate, give thanksgiving to God for this great country that we live in, even though things are not going the way we'd like to see them, still we have so much to be thankful for, and we shouldn't be kafei tova, we shouldn't be ungrateful for the good that we have, because the truth is, this is something I've taught for a long time, and I have to remind myself of it, because I'm feeling very ungrateful, I'll be honest. I'm not feeling happy as I should. I have to push myself and force myself to be happy. And it's not easy, but it's the right thing to do. You know, this is something I learned more recently, maybe the past 2 years or so. Dennis Prager's Gesundheit. He said, just like you get up in the morning and take a shower, and you put on deodorant to get off a bad smell from your body, and you brush your teeth and use mouthwash so your breath doesn't stink. If you wake up with a bad attitude, you have to wash that away too. And part of that is, as the way he said it, is that not just for yourself, for all those around you, right? That it's not nice for them to smell you stinking. And so too, if you're in a bad mood, it's not nice for others to be negatively affected by your bad mood. So that's Aleph. That's the first part. But the next part is something I used to teach, and I should bring this back. The importance of the attitude of gratitude, the accomplishments that one accomplishes having proper attitude. Are as follows. And it's not only proper attitude, but it's living a good life in general. Let's say a person has a pet dog. If the dog is nasty, dangerous, harmful, the person is going to keep that dog on a very short leash, a very strong chain, so the dog is not a danger to others around. If the dog behaves itself, it gets a lot more freedom. Same thing with higher than the dog, the child. A parent will restrict or try to restrict the child if he doesn't trust the child to do what's beneficial to the child himself. It's not out of retribution or control, but out of love. When the child is demonstrating that he or she is responsible and not engaging in activities out of ignorance that could cause harm to his or herself, thus the child receives more privileges. If not, privileges can be at least tried to be taken away. But I'll say something even more. The next level. And so the better the child is, the more privileges the child has. And it's part of the growth of the child. The next level, I'm talking about a person who works in an office. And in the office, he gets a comfortable chair, and an air conditioner in the summer, and a heater in the winter, and food at the workplace, and high-speed internet, and all of these other things. And the purpose of all of that, that's not how you're getting paid. You get paid with a paycheck. But that is how you're more productive. But if you demonstrate yourself that you're not productive, these resources could be taken away, or if the resources are being squandered or misused or misappropriated, the resources will be taken away. And essentially, in this world, we don't receive reward as much as we receive the resources that we need for the next world. There is a certain amount of reward and punishment that takes place here. And that's the main reward and punishment, or reward and correction, that are discussed in Scripture. In the Hebrew Bible, Jewish Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, you don't have a lot of talk about heaven and hell. And one contemporary rabbi points out that there's an apologetic argument that's brought from that. Because heaven and hell are esoteric, so man-made religious texts like to talk about heaven and hell. Because nobody can tell you for sure that this is real or not, and so that's a matter of faith. The one religious text that actually came from God, which is the Hebrew Bible, and then the oral traditions also came from God that later man put into text, doesn't talk about heaven and hell very much. It mentions it because it's a reality, but not in the sense of reward and punishment, but rather just a reality. But rather, when it comes to reward and correction, it is financial, it is substantial, it's the weather, it's historical events, exile, and return. That is what the Bible talks about as far as reward and punishment, things that we can actually see. We actually see I saw with my own eyes in the Holy Land, sabbatical year, that there was a crazy, unusual storm, which I've discussed many other times. This was 21 years ago. More than that now, a few months more than that now, because we're already, last year was a sabbatical year. And this storm destroyed the crops of people who were not keeping the sabbatical year, and those very same rains blessed the crops of the people who were keeping the sabbatical year. Because the real God who created heaven and earth and who runs all things is the real God who commanded us all the laws in the Torah, including the sabbatical year. And God said, this is what's going to happen. God said, if you keep the laws from the Satim Atartzchem Be'ita Yer Malkesh, in Deuteronomy 11, I believe, we say every day in the Kriyas Shema, V'hoyam Shemaya, the second paragraph of the Kriyas Shema, it says, if you keep this, I'll give you the rain. The early rain, the late rain in its due season. And if not, there won't be rain. And we see this. This is not something that's a matter of faith. This is a matter of fact. It says if you keep the laws, you'll be blessed, you'll be prosperous. And if not, you'll be tortured. You'll be persecuted. You'll be exiled. You'll be enslaved. We've seen this throughout history. We saw in the 1920s, 1930s, more and more Jews started to turn their back on God. And then the Holocaust came. And like Rashi explains, when in Genesis chapter 6, I believe verse 13, that when the destruction comes, it affects both the righteous and the wicked equally. Maybe not exactly equally, but somewhat. Sometimes the righteous, this again is a matter of faith, the righteous can be taken as a vicarious atonement for the wicked, meaning one righteous person could count for many wicked people. That is already a matter of faith. But the fact of the matter that historically Jews became less religious in the 20th century. You know, I remember seeing a film from the 1930s showing Jewish communities in Europe. And it was describing as follows, maybe it was just a picture. It says, here is a wagon driver reading a Yiddish newspaper. And they said a few years ago, the sight would have been the wagon driver reading Mishnayos. And now instead of reading Mishnayos, he's reading a secular newspaper that's brainwashing him to become a communist, probably. And so is it any wonder that God sent the Holocaust? The Jews turned their back on God. You know, the way I remember reading one place, a Christian was saying that in America, the society was saying to God to get out of here. You don't belong in the public forum, you don't belong in the schools and this and that. And so being the gentleman he is, he didn't overstay his welcome, so to speak. And so that's why whatever, I think this was specifically talking about September 11th. And so too in our own lives. I know I'm a sinner. and I see the pain that my own sins cause financially to myself. And all of this anyway, the point is in the end, that's not the reward or the punishment. It's really God's mercy. Even when we are suffering, that is God's mercy. Because if the financial means are taken away from a sinner, then he will sin less. And if the financial means are open to the charitable person, he will give more charity. And that's the equivalent, like we said, of the dog with the chain, or the parent giving more privileges or less privileges to a child based on his actions. And on the businessman, on the worker in the office, who has more resources if he's using the resources properly, and less resources if he's not. He could totally lose the job in the end. And so the reason God will give us the rain is so we can do more justice, more kindness, more charity, more devotion. And he will take it away from us to restrict us so we don't hurt ourselves more. That's really what it comes down to. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, subscribe, and be thankful, because that is the greatest thing. One of the greatest things we can do is develop the attitude of gratitude. When we are thankful, God grants us more resources, so we have more to be thankful for. Like I said, I heard from the one preacher on the video I had to show work. God is enthroned on the praises of Israel, on the praises of his people and of all people. If we praise God, we're, in the archetypical sense, making a throne for God. We're giving a place for God to sit down and spend time with us. And if we're more thankful, and again, that's also the idea of why the temple was taken away from us. All those animals, if they're being sacrificed and the people weren't being transformed by that sacrifice, so what purpose was there? But if we take with the little that we have and dedicate it with all our heart, soul, and might to God, we sit down and enjoy a nice meal today to put us in a good mood. Even you can have a little drink or something. You get in a good mood. You feel good. You feel good that you ate something. And you use this now. You should eat and be satisfied and bless the Lord your God. Meaning after you eat, not just say grace before you eat. Obviously you're hungry, you have to think about God. There's no atheist in a foxhole. That's not a big deal. That you have to do. To be more, after you're satisfied, to also thank God. In that stupor of the turkey and maybe some wine or beer or something, or a hard apple cider is what I bought to enjoy today. And you can still thank God with all your heart. So God will give you more. You can have a nice feast every day, because that's what God wants. And then you'll have the real feast that we want is the feast of God blessing us with with the temple back, and we'll be able to bring the Lachmei Toida again. If you didn't daven yet this morning, have a little more kavanah when you say Mizmor L'Soida, Psalm 100. When you say the Hallel, I'm gonna Yirtzeh Hashem daven when I get to work. So almost there. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. Put on Talis Tefillin home, and then I'll put it on again at work. Yirtzeh Hashem. But thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. Have a very, very happy Thanksgiving and a good Chodesh.